Now introduce Rebecca Mond. And Rebecca is the Vice President of Federal Government Affairs for the Toy Association. And what that means is that she represents the Toy Association and the toy industry's interests in the United States in Washington, D.C. And as you can imagine, it's a lot of work right now that she's got to do. She works with legislators and regulators on federal and international level to advocate on behalf of the toy industry's interests on a wide range of issues, including product safety, international trade, customs issues like import surveillance, intellectual property protection, taxes, emerging technology, and transportation. Rebecca graduated from Georgetown University, majoring in government with a focus on U.S.-China politics, and has studied and traveled extensively in China. Let's hear it for Rebecca Mond.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Richard, and thank you for having me. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the U.S.-China relationship and just the political landscape for those of you doing business in the United States. So very briefly about the Toy Association and our mission. The mission is to be a unifying force for members' creativity, responsibility, and global success, advocating for the needs and championing the benefits of play. Our association is just over 100 years old. We have just shy of 1,000 members, and these members represent everybody from manufacturers and importers to brand owners, basically everybody who's involved in the creation, the designing, the bringing to market, and the selling of toys in the United States. Quite a few different initiatives that our association takes, and these include the Genius of Play, which is promoting the value of play for children in early education. Toy safety is an initiative that our association has been long involved in and been a leader in. I do want to highlight that we have just begun a safety education program, and this program is an opportunity for you to learn about what the U.S. the toy safety requirements are, as well as the international toy safety requirements, ISO 8175 and EN 71. So you can get a certification saying that you have completed the course, and so that is available on our website. Additionally, we run New York Toy Fair as well as Dallas Toy Fair, which is formerly Fall Toy Preview, and we have other events, Toy of the Year Award, for example. I do some of the advocacy on the federal level, but we do have state and international level as well. And then, of course, media, and then we have the Toy Foundation, which is our philanthropic arm. So for those of you who aren't familiar with federal government affairs, Richard did provide a little bit of an introduction, but really federal government affairs, our objective is to stop bad things from happening to the toy industry and to try to promote good opportunities for the industry. And so I want to emphasize try, because it doesn't always work. But we focus on a few main areas, 6 main areas: product safety, international trade, chemical regulation, environmental sustainability, marketing to children, and connected toys, IP protection, and then miscellaneous, which is anything from toy drones to tax to transportation, basically any issues that would come up and impact the toy industry. While I'm not going to be talking about it today, I do want to just highlight very quickly, marketing to children and connected toys is an issue that is under a lot of discussion right now with Congress, looking to update what's called the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act. And this is U.S. legislation that mandates how companies can collect and store children's data. And so this is something that we are expecting to see some sort of a revision, if not this year, then very soon. As a federal government affairs representative, the key audiences that we advocate with include Congress, as well as federal agencies like the White House, U.S. trade representatives, Department of Commerce, Customs for IP initiatives, as well as import surveillance, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, etc. I did mention that we do a lot of international government affairs, so I just wanted to highlight this is a map of some of the areas where we have advocated on behalf of the toy industry. And usually these are on international regulatory barriers to trade. So this would include testing regulations that are different, or certification requirements, those kinds of things. So we are involved in issues all around the world. That said, this past year, tariffs and the U.S.-China relationship has been my #1 priority, given the potential threat that it could have posed for the toy industry. So I wanted to give a little bit of a background on why we are here and what is the purpose of all this from the government's perspective. So back in the 2016 election, President Trump ran on the message of fair trade. He talked about pulling out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He talked about renegotiating the North American Free Trade Agreement. And then he also talked about reducing the trade deficit. And he said that the trade relationship between the US and China is very unfair. Peter Navarro is the president's really #1 man on trade issues, and he has been described as a China hawk, as in he's very critical against China, and he has written books about how the United States can combat the China rise. And so this is this person who is really talking to the president on a day-to-day basis and advising him on US-China policy. On March 22nd, 2018, USTR came out with what is called the Section 301 report, and this is where the US government found that China has been engaging in intellectual property theft as well as cyber theft, and that there has been forced technology transfers, which is just that tech companies need to keep their intellectual property in China, and that this is causing significant economic harm to US economy. So this is really the basis for trade remedies and for tariff action. So this is what this did is it said that the administration has the ability to fix the situation, and the fix is tariffs. And so that was what really rolled out the tariff lists. There have been other issues that the US government has identified as reasons for this trade war. This includes reducing the trade deficit, which ironically is at its highest currently at $419 billion. There's also talk, the US government is saying that they want to remove China from the center of the global supply chain and change US sourcing patterns away from China and to other countries. Of course, the idea is to bring it to the United States, but there is a recognition that not all manufacturing can go to the United States, and that's been a big message that we've been carrying to the Hill, that our industry has been long entrenched in China, that 85% of manufacturing, or 85% of toys sold in the United States are manufactured in China. And that's something that will not easily change. Quite simply, the labor doesn't exist in the United States, the infrastructure doesn't exist there, and it's just not really the desirable outcome to have toy industry move to the United States. Of course, there's also concerns from the US government about China's economic rise to power as well as the political rise to power. And then also the President Xi Jinping's Made in China 2025 policy is something of concern for the US government as well. So where are we today? I just want to let you know that this is all subject to change. The United States government wakes up in a few hours, so all of this might be different in a few hours because it is constantly fluid, it's constantly changing. But right now, as it stands, there are 3 tariff lists, and the good news is that toys are currently not on the US list. Now, toys are on China retaliation lists. For those of you who are importing from the United States to China, that would be an impact to you. But for toy imports to China, they are currently not on any tariff lists, and we don't foresee them being on any tariff lists in the future. We think that things are moving in a positive direction. That said, toy inputs are subject to US tariffs, so things like ABS plastic as well as silicone rubber, some plastic injection moldings for those who are importing to US toy manufacturers, those would be impacted, as well as toy-related products like children's furniture and hats and handbags, those are all impacted as well. On December 1st, President Trump and President Xi Jinping, they had a meeting in Argentina at the G20 summit, and they came to a truce where they said that they were going to de-escalate the trade tensions and not pursue further tariffs. At that time, we were concerned that there was going to be a fourth list and that the remaining $267 billion worth of Chinese imports to the United States would be subject to additional tariffs, and that did not happen, so that was a good positive outcome. They said that they would have 90 days, and after 90 days, the United States would be raising tariffs. That deadline was March 1st, and about a week before that deadline hit, the administration said that because of the positive progress that is happening between the US and China, they would not be escalating tariffs at that time. That said, right now, as of last week, so Vice Premier Liu He just met with President Trump, and we were expecting to see possibly a timeline announced. However, that did not happen. But there's been a rough timeline of 4 weeks, maybe more, maybe less. But they are saying that they're very close to a trade agreement. I do want to say that this has been a very ambitious goal. These are issues that have been under negotiations for the past 10 years or so. And so to be able to negotiate these within 90 days is, that's an aggressive timeline. So right now they are really stuck on a few specific issues: forced technology transfer, IP protection, and then also enforcement mechanisms. And the enforcement mechanisms is something that we're really keeping an eye on, because this is where the US government wants to make sure that China maintains lives up to their commitments, and that those enforcement mechanisms very likely could be more tariffs. The president has said that they plan to keep the tariffs that are in place now. They want to keep those in place for the foreseeable future. So we don't think that those will go away right away, but we don't see additional tariffs. We certainly don't see them on toys at this time. So what are we doing about this in the United States? Well, we have been very active on this issue. As I said, this has been our #1 priority. When we were looking at possibly seeing toys on the list, we were ready to hit with a PR campaign saying, please don't take toys away from children, and have a bunch of crying children out there. But fortunately, we did not have to resort to that. We have been meeting with members of Congress as well as the administration. We did just have a fly-in where we had over 125 industry representatives from across the board. This included farmers, included technology, retailers, apparel, you name it. They are impacted and they were involved in this, and they're carrying our message to Congress and saying that this is very detrimental to the US economy. These tariffs target US companies and US importers. Now that said, honestly, China is a brand issue on Capitol Hill, and the response has not necessarily been positive. Now, just to kind of give a little bit of historic background, Republicans are known as free traders. They want to reduce trade barriers, and so to have a Republican administration say we want to increase these trade barriers, that's very different. That usually doesn't happen. The Democrats on Capitol Hill, they usually are very critical of China, and they particularly focus on labor practices as well as environmental issues, and just the fact that US jobs are leaving the United States and they are going overseas. So right now, we have a Republican Congress that's concerned about going against the Trump administration, because they're looking at the next elections, and the Trump base is very strong. They're very loyal to President Trump. And so anytime a Republican lawmaker is critical against President Trump, usually they're attacked with a tweet. And then also there's impact to their elections. You're seeing a nationalistic approach to trade in the United States, and this is something that, again, the United States has generally pursued free trade agreements, and now we're kind of looking inwards at this point. And so this is a very different era than perhaps 5 years ago. Democrats, while they are willing to be critical against the Trump administration right now, China is just not the issue that they're willing to stand up to the administration on. They would much rather focus on other issues like the Russia scandal and other things. So when we go to Capitol Hill, what are they saying? They're saying, well, tariffs are kind of working. They brought China to the table. The negotiations are happening. So let's see what happens and comes out of the negotiations. So looking ahead, we do think that a trade agreement will be announced. And I say agreement, it might be a trade memorandum of understanding, however it's worded. The significance of that is usually a trade agreement would need to have congressional approval, but the administration has said that they will not be requiring congressional approval at this point. So it's something that they want to fast track, that they want to approve very quickly. But there will be scrutiny, there will be oversight of whatever is announced, and we do expect that kind of to be another opportunity to talk about, okay, we need to remove the tariffs that are in place, we need to encourage cooperation. I think that's a very important message to be carrying here today, that it's on businesses to talk about the benefits of trade and benefits of opening up markets, and then the importance of opening up markets for US companies. We want to be able to sell our toys in China. And for China, there's also a lot of opportunities in the United States. One of the things I think that we have an opportunity to talk about is counterfeit protection. And this is a big issue for our members and something that I'll talk about in just a second. I did want to put the caveat that, of course, all of this is subject to tweet, change by tweet. So again, the Trump is going to be waking up in a few hours, and so we might see a tweet that would blow everything up and change direction. So, we will see what happens. So on the counterfeit toy issue, I do want to bring this up because intellectual property protection was one of the main reasons for this trade negotiation. The Toy Association just recently came out with this report called The Real Threat of Fake Toys, where we look at the rising problem of counterfeit toys sold on e-commerce marketplaces. We really identified three main factors that are contributing to this. One is the fact that the brand protection, the impetus is put on the brand owners to protect their brands, that there's lack of consumer awareness, and there's not enough proactive measures in place on e-commerce platforms to protect against IP infringing goods and to stop those from being relisted on e-commerce marketplaces. We think that there's going to be an opportunity in the coming weeks because the White House has just signed a memorandum of understanding to look at what factors are contributing to this rise of e-commerce. And so rise of e-commerce and IP infringement on e-commerce. So we will be working with the White House administration as well as the federal government agencies involved to be able to talk about the concerns that we have as the toy industry and towards the problems that we see on counterfeits and toy safety. So that's going to be something that we think that the U.S. Toy Association as well as our counterparts in China can talk about what our experiences are where we think that there can be solutions to this issue. Oh, there we go. And with that, 谢谢. Thank you.